smarter than you or I put together, because he knew Yahuwah God. Adam was 1,000 times smarter. Noah, Enoch, Abraham, these patriarchs were stronger, smarter, purer than we. We need to learn from them, not inject our modern, watered-down, program thinking into their writings, which scholars do all the time. And this approach we employ will bring great revelation in these days and increasing knowledge, which Daniel predicted. But what about these 3 territories in Africa? We laid this down on the map, but we have not proven it out yet. But now we will. First, Egypt is well documented in history. We know where that is. Pathros is modern-day Sudan, which we will show you maps actually encompassing a larger area for that as well. And Ethiopia, well, in Isaiah's day, was not just the little country on the east side of Africa that we call Ethiopia today, which is former Abyssinia. Part of Ethiopia, yes, but a very small portion of the entire area. And we are now going to prove that with historical maps and overwhelming evidence. We can actually locate that the lost tribes were, yes, in Abyssinia, Ethiopia today, but also all the way over to what they called the Slave Coast. Now, there are videos out there which do this, but we will take a comprehensive, thorough approach, as we always do, and we will prove it. Let's begin with the world map of Herodotus from 450 BC. That's extremely close to the period of the dispersion of the lost tribes of the north. And about 500 years before, give or take, Judea was dispersed from Jerusalem and Judea. It also happens to be close to the time of Isaiah, so it's a very good measure. You can see Europe, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Indian Ocean. But Herodotus lays out 2 things that we really should all be aware of regarding mentions of Africa in Scripture. Libya is basically considered the entire northwestern portion of the continent of Africa at that time. That is important, but not for this message. And Ethiopia was considered the entire central portion of Africa, and from east coast all the way to the west coast, all of it. So much so that the naming of the South Atlantic Ocean at that time, and all the way up until the 1700s, was Ethiopian Sea. Now, this would make no sense if Ethiopia was just a small little country on the east coast where Abyssinia was at that time. When the Ethiopian Sea it is named after is all the way on the west coast, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. See, history pulls this all together and confirms itself. Also notice, Herodotus views the world in the shape of a brain, and we just think that is a coincidence that we should not overlook. He was, contrary to many scholars who paint him as a good Christian man, he was an occultist, and they worship the power of the brain, and you see, well documented in their writings, his writings especially, the philosophers and the fathers of modern scientism. No, we do not refer to that as science, by the way, because it is a religion, and you will find, especially in the areas of creation and the flood, they defy logic and draw theories and conclusions based on their occult religion, even the atheists, whether they realize it or not. Now, we could stop there, but there are maps that get more and more detailed along the way. And when you see some of the writings on them, if you have not seen this, it is going to blow your mind, because yes, they literally pinpoint the lost tribes of the southern kingdom lived here. and I mean specifically. This is a mapping of Ptolemy's description of Africa, in which Ptolemy lived closer to the time of Messiah. But this mapping was done in 1467, and in the 1400s, guess what? They still viewed Middle Ethiopia as the territory south of Egypt and the country we call Ethiopia today, which was known as Abyssinia in ancient times, is reflected as sub-Egypt, Ethiopia, and then there was Ethiopia Interior, which goes all the way over to the Slave Coast. Also note the northwestern area of Africa was all known as Libya, as we saw before. It's no problem that both those names today refer to much smaller areas, though. We're not taking issue with that, because they once referred to these vast areas, as this is not uncommon in geography necessarily, but we wish to get to the bottom of exactly where the Lost Tribes went, and this shows a much greater area than Abyssinia encompasses, doesn't it? And Isaiah was being specific, wasn't he? Let's fast forward to 1743 and look at the vast territory of Ethiopia, even still, which sprawls all the way over to the west coast of Africa. And notice the bottom right, Central Africa, also called Ethiopia. And once again, even in 1743, the South Atlantic Ocean was known as the Ethiopian Ocean. Yeah. There's much more to Ethiopia than starving children that we see on TV, isn't there? And in 1771, we now see the Atlantic Ocean enter the picture on maps. But look at Lower Ethiopia, all the way to the west coast of Africa, Upper Ethiopia, all of Central Africa, and the country we call Ethiopia today was Abyssinia. Again, we saw from the oldest maps that was a part of Ethiopia, though. So it is not inappropriate that it be named Ethiopia today. There's nothing wrong with that, but it certainly confuses the issue when looking at biblical geography, which is why you have to dig deeper many times. And 16 years later, in 1787, we find a map of Africa, which may be very telling. There's Abyssinia, but the remainder of Ethiopia is blank, almost as if it had been decimated by that point, and we will get to that. Then, even still, we see in the remnants of the name Ethiopia, in the ocean meridian of Ethiopia down at the bottom. Ethiopia was far more significant than we are told today. It has certainly been marginalized, and this kind of thing can be restored. One more. By 1852, much had happened in Africa as the colonialists enslaved much of Ethiopia. And it wasn't just one country, it was most of them from Europe. A pattern we also see in the Philippines and Kurdistan as well. But here in Africa, there's no question it is far worse. The other two areas pale in comparison when it comes to the brutality. There's no doubt about that, although many were murdered in both of those other areas too, and you can't marginalize that either. Much of Africa had been renamed at this point, but still you see the remnant of Ethiopia in Central Africa as Plateau Ethiopia. So it's still there, and you can see the progression, and I must say it is saddening indeed. Though Yahuwah God said the lost tribes would be enslaved and face all kinds of evil, no doubt, we want to be clear. The ones perpetrating this evil, just as Assyria and Babylon, will receive the fruits and the rewards of their evil. There is no doubting that. That will occur. Don't worry, This story has a happy ending for those who are in relationship with him. Now, though we enter an arena that will blow your mind, the next maps we are going to show you not only detail Ethiopia, they literally locate the lost tribes. I know some will say, well, somebody created those maps. Well, indeed they did. Someone did. And they certainly could have had agendas. We're not doubting that. But look at the cartographers, and you will find they were colonialists who were seeking out the lost tribes to enslave them. They had nothing to gain by marking lost tribes on their maps unless they just so happened to have been targeting them. See, we find this in the story of Columbus, which we've covered, who believed he found the lost tribes in East Asia. Yet, he was only in America. But he did not know that until his dying day. And what did he do to the people that he thought were the people of Ophir and Tarshish, the lost tribes of Arsareth? This is what Columbus believed. These are his words. Well, he moved to enslave them and steal their resources, their gold. To do what? Well, in his own words, to fund a new Israel. Really? You mean Zionism? Well, if you look into it, yeah, that is the root of Zionism. It is the people like Columbus who were doing exactly this. And his dream did come true in 1947, really in 1917, because that's when Israel was really established in modern Israel, though again, no tribes, no lost tribes are there, except for the overseas workers that happen to be working there or visiting there. Otherwise, they're not there. Oh wait, that actually happened? You mean Columbus actually thought he was enslaving the lost tribes? That's how he treated the lost tribes? Well, they did it again when they came to the Philippines. So this was not a pattern of just one explorer. It was all of them pretty much. And it's what they did in Africa as well. And they were doing all of this at about the same time. See, then you see the same with Magellan and those who preceded him or after him, as one wave after another enters the Philippines, taking it over, enslaving the population, stealing its resources, and leaving and implanting its control, religion, government, and every other way that they could keep those people in check, because they don't want the lost tribes to be rising up in the last days, which is prophesied by the Messiah himself in Matthew 12:42. The purpose they did not change, and then you see this same pattern in Africa, only far more violent and far more evil indeed. That doesn't mean they took it easy on South Americans and those that were not lost tribes. Oh, no, no, no. They certainly enslaved them too. They became no respecter of persons when it came to enslaving people, except there don't seem to be many Japhethites, white people, among those slaves, do they? And I've yet to see a picture or a description of those